Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm here with Galiano, man. We met last year, and I was excited and pumped about Boxables. And this is a company that Rad diversified as we open the next REIT, as we know, open our next investments. It's a company that we are looking deep into because they're changing the construction industry in a way that is kind of a little bit mind-blowing to me. And I'll probably take us down some past Galiano today that might surprise you, or you might know them absolutely. But it's not too often I get to talk to someone with from a different world in the real estate world, but there's so much overlapping related stuff. But man, tell everybody who you are, right? If they don't know what Boxables is, they're not paying attention to what's happening in mainstream media and what's happening in the world today. But tell everybody who you are, brother.
Yeah, Dutch, thank you so much for having me on the show. My name is Galiano Tiramani. I'm one of the founders of Boxabl. We are a factory in Las Vegas that is mass producing housing. And we have a bunch of new technology that's going to allow us to hopefully produce housing at the lowest cost ever. The idea is that our tech enables assembly line mass production so that we can just kind of build houses the same way they build cars and other products. And yeah, definitely, a ton of overlap here for what we're both doing.
Yeah, I love the low cost housing solution, right? Because in America right now, we're getting to a place where people can't afford houses, right? The average person who's just, at college, a couple years, 5 years into being a professional, they struggle, and even be able to afford a house is a struggle. But even rents going up rapidly, right? And so is that kind of part of the initial mission behind Boxabl, or tell me the origin, tell me the X-Men, story, the young, Xavier, right, story, since I'm starting to use that. Tell me the origin story.
Yeah, sure. So there's definitely huge, crazy demand for housing, not just in the U.S. but all over the world. I think the last Fannie Mae statistic was that there's a 3 million housing unit shortage in the U.S. and the population is not going down. So bottom line is the current methods of building, it's just not sustainable. There needs to be another way. No matter how much money you throw at the problem, there's just not enough resources to build enough housing. And that's because of the way they're doing it. They're going out onto sites with, pieces of wood and hammers and ladders, and they're kind of just like, skilled craftsmen building these things. And you can imagine that if any other product was built like that, it would be very, expensive and slow. And for example, like imagine you ordered a car, and instead of a car showing up in your driveway or picking it up at the dealership, some guys show up with some sheet metal and hammers and welding torches and start building that thing in your driveway.
Yeah,
It's
not
going to
even the
take
parts, just raw materials. Yeah.
It's going to be crazy to do it that way, but that's what they do with housing. Everyone's used to it. At Boxabl, we think we've kind of solved the problems that have stopped it from transitioning onto the assembly line. So now what we have is a really, really big play to hopefully revolutionize building construction worldwide and bring what is one of the biggest, markets, industries, kind of out of the Stone Ages and into post-industrial factory mass production. So, we got started a few years ago. I think it was end of 2017. Back then, just had the idea to, fold up the houses so that they could ship.
Yeah, but you're such a humble dude. I mean, you got started a few years ago, but I know you guys have raised over 150 million, right? And your total capital raising is my understanding, and your valuation is through the roof. Tell people, actually, before that, my guys are hitting me with, I got to do the quick disclosures, right? So, Galiano are not compensating. We're not compensating each other in any way, right? We found a company that we found strategic, synergy with. I look at their company and I say, hey, what about a Boxabl Reit, right? If Rad Diversify could open a Boxabl Reit, I think that would kick ass, right? I have seen so much passion in especially low cost housing right here in America that is literally ghetto stay ghetto, because the cost to rebuild them is more expensive than the value of the properties in those neighborhoods, right? And so like I got a lot of passion for it, and him the same, in different ways with Rad. So just to be clear that there's no compensation between us, right? With this, it's finding companies that you can strategically align. And I think as an investors, we have a responsibility. There's so much shit out there that if we can like share what's good and what's better, it makes a huge difference. So let's dive deeper. And forgive me for interrupting. I just knew that I had to do those disclosures, or these guys will kill me. So.
Well, the bottom line is I want you to buy the houses, and I want to give you guys kind of priority access to get to the front of the line because we're going to need quality partners to start deploying these houses. The idea is that Boxabl would be a absolutely huge factory that would mass produce housing, room modules, and we would sell those room modules to builders and developers. They would take the rooms, stack, connect them, set them up on sites, and then sell or lease the building. So Boxabl itself wouldn't be a developer of real estate, but we would sell room modules to others who would develop and operate the real estate.
Yeah, and that's huge for us, right? So we've been buying land for years and years and years in different cities for different reasons, and the ability to do fast deployable housing, the ability to do, like, the speed of it is miraculous, right? I mean, it could take me a year, even 2 years sometimes with between permitting and planning and everything else to build a home. If we have a foundation with water and electric laid, right, how long does it take to have a Boxabl set up? How long does it take to get one delivered, installed, and all that stuff?
Yeah, the time it takes to develop real estate is crazy. So if anyone hasn't seen what we're doing, I would suggest just head over to the website, boxabl.com, boxabl.com, and then you can see the actual product right there on the homepage. And you'll notice that it's basically a fully finished house that ships on a truck and just sets up literally in a few hours. And there you're done. So, the builder developer, they would prepare the site, bring in the utilities, and then what we're providing is a finished room. So the first product we have is a small, kind of a small house, and it's kitchen, bathroom, electric, plumbing, flooring, windows, like everything we could possibly get done in the factory is done. And then the cool thing is we were able to actually fold up this large 20-foot room down to 8.5 feet so that it can ship at the lowest possible cost. And that's a really big deal because that's what's going to allow us to scale manufacturing.
Now, the units that people put in their backyards, right? I'm trying to think of what the names of them are right now. How does Boxabl's compare to those types of units where people are buying them as like a secondary rental or a secondary thing for like in their backyards?
Yeah, exactly. So accessory dwelling units is what they're calling them.
Yeah.
In California, ADU. That's something that's becoming really popular lately. In fact, they've changed the laws in California to basically legalize them in every single backyard in the whole state. So it's opening up a huge demand. Additionally, I think the state has a grant program where they give people $40,000 towards building one. So a really big opportunity. And originally, when we set out to start Boxabl, we thought, well, where do we start? We have a building system where we're going to produce different size rooms that stack and connect to build most buildings, like a single family residential or a big apartment building, and anything in between. And then we said, we looked at California accessory dwelling units, backyard cottages, and said, let's start with our smallest room module. We'll fit it out as a little studio apartment, and we'll target it towards that market. And what ended up happening was people just went crazy for Boxabl, and now we have a wait list that has over 160,000 names on it. So like totally insane, because when we started, I thought maybe we'd sell a few hundred. 160,000 names, and that's not even the unit count. That's just the names. A lot of those people put the quantity as 10, 100 units. So just insane demand just for this initial product. That's that little backyard house. And it makes sense for a lot of people because if your site's already developed and your house is there and you're just throwing in, just the room and plugging it in kind of to the main house, and you want to do that as a rental property, the numbers can really crunch on someone for that.
Yeah. What about doing like as rental properties, like multiple units, right? Within the same property. I think you kind of mentioned that to me before. I just think it's on online.
Yeah, I think you can put,
stackable
they're really
units,
in California, at least they're really opening them up. I think you can do multi-story. I think you can do multi-units. They've done things like reduce setbacks. So, you don't have, you can go closer to the property line. The state has stepped in and stopped local governments from prohibiting the building of these type of units. So they're just going nuts with it. It's a huge opportunity. And then it's also spreading to other places as well, not just California. Nevada just passed a tiny house law, and I think it's going on in some other states as well.
Tiny houses has become a pretty viral, right, subject in itself. I think what's pretty cool is when you get to a point, like people ask us all the time, well, why do you guys have a waiting list, right? And you guys have a waiting list too, and it feels, you know, when you get to a place in a business where people are waiting on demand and you're trying to scale, you're working to grow, right, to be able to handle that demand. Like you and I both, you know, suffer from that same blessing, you know, at the same time. Talk about the things you want to accomplish. I know you want $1 billion factory, right? I know you want a factory to rival Elon Musk and you know what Tesla's done with their super factory, right? Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, for sure. So we've now been in production about 14 months. We basically went from me, my father, Paolo, and another guy, Kyle, the three founders, and an idea. Then we jumped right into a 170,000 foot factory, several hundred employees, millions of dollars in manufacturing equipment, and now we're producing about 2 homes per day. And everything is just looking great. You know, we're dialing everything in, the process. We just did a ribbon cutting ceremony on a second factory building. So that's going to come online shortly. We're doing a whole bunch of equipment upgrades with automation. We're getting into a next generation of the product. So like huge progress on every front. And then kind of making the case for the next level of scale. So what we're doing now is just saying, hey, we're here proving out the concept. You know, we're proving that this works, that the numbers crunch, that everything makes sense, and it's going to work at what is, you know, a small scale, basically. You know, we do have a really big factory. It's a really big operation, but in the grand scheme of demand for housing, it's really small. If our current factory can produce 5,000 houses, you know, per year, which is what we're projecting, it's hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue, and it's a big operation. But compared to the size of the problem of housing, it's not close to where we need to be. So we're saying that what we're doing now is a proof of concept, and then we're making the case for the next level of scale, which, as you mentioned, hopefully will be a $1 billion factory. So we're planning something else kind of, you know, a few miles away from the current factory in Las Vegas. That would be a multi-million square foot factory that would produce, you know, tens of thousands of units and allow us to really, you know, get to the next level of automation and bulk purchasing and just dial in all these efficiencies and get closer to what you see with an automobile plant. So whether it's a Ford factory or a Tesla factory, they have huge assembly lines, robotics everywhere. They've pushed their labor costs down next to nothing, and they're putting out 1 car per minute. So we think we're going to be able to do that with housing. And if we can do that, it's going to be a really big deal. And this next factory that we're planning, I'm pretty sure is going to be the biggest house factory ever done in the history of the world. So, you know, really exciting. And like I mentioned before, we're looking to line up partners to take all those modules and deploy them on various real estate developments.
You know, it's fascinating as I look at the market and I look at what's happening and I look at the home builders that did layoffs at the end of the year and reduced their amount of homes that they're going to build in this year in 2023. And I'm kind of blown away that that's a decision they would make with what the gap is, right? The amount of shortage of housing in the United States is kind of mind blowing, and all that's going to do is continue to raise rents, right? And the interest rates are going to continue to cause a raise of rents on the consumers and stuff. So take me through a little bit with Boxabl's, like what is the pricing model? Just give me one example. People should go to the website if they want to see more, but go to the give me one pricing model. What do you sell a Boxabl unit at? What is your cost of construction and delivery? What is your margin? And are you carrying financing for people? Those are things that come to mind for me.
Yeah, you know, I think those traditional home builders are being very cautious. They're scared to get, you know, beat up really badly like they might have in 2008. And at the end of the day, they're working off a model where they have certain costs that aren't changing. They're not trying to chase down new technology to bring the cost down. So it's going to cost what it's going to cost for them to build. At Boxabl, we kind of changed everything. If you look at a traditional job site around the country, you'll see lumber frame, wood, pieces of wood, 2x4s, nails hammered together. We're not using any of that. We re-engineered everything from scratch. Of course, it started with our shipping solution that enables us to be able to ship and therefore build in the factory. And then we took a whack at, let's pick different stuff that's more compatible with the factory, that will allow us to assemble things together rapidly, that can be work with something like a CNC cutting equipment. And what we've come up with is really amazing. It's a laminated panel system. We've gone from a traditional wall that might have 1,000 nails in it and 100 pieces of wood down to far fewer parts. All those parts are cut and processed by CNC. They're all going to be assembled together automatically. So like, for example, right now, just in our original equipment that we got when starting up, we build one wall panel in about 20 minutes. And then we've ordered new equipment that's all very custom. And then once that's installed, we're going to get down to about 3 minutes per wall panel. So that's like a number that no one could ever, even believe was possible.
So who's the design construction like genius? Who had the knowledge to be able to dive in and kind of be the R&D, the creator? Is it your dad? Is it you? Is it your partner?
Yeah, I mean, really, it was the three of us kind of working together. Paolo's background is intellectual property licensing, where he would invent products, patent them, and then sell the patents. So he did that for 30 years very successfully. He's also an expert in like 3D solid modeling on the computer. And then Kyle, also an expert in 3D modeling, engineer. And actually, he had a background in building construction growing up with his family business. They were building residential homes. So he brought a little bit of the real world knowledge. And then I did a lot of research on alternative building materials and chasing down, like figuring out what should we be using to build these things, what makes sense based on the various, opportunities and restrictions we have. And, we've gone through, several iterations of the product and come to what we have today. It's basically the three of us kind of messing around in the garage with different building materials and testing panels and breaking stuff and reading other people's data and figuring it out. And what we've come up with, not only do we think it's going to be much lower cost to build, much faster, but it's also outperforming on pretty much everything else. And we
so as a kid, were you like into Legos? Were you putting the logs together? Like where's, like just to say, hey, I'm going to be a genius and I'm going to come up with a construction model that beats the system, that beats the everyday, right? Like my kid is crazy into marbles, right? And he builds these like erector sets with all these different pieces, and then he drops the marble and it goes through all the different stuff. And so there's a part of him that has that natural kind of mechanical part to him and a fascination with it. Like we bought him this magnets, like building blocks, and he literally spent hours and hours with it, right? And it's fascinating because my other son could give two shits, right, about that. He's into other stuff. But so is that like you as a kid? I'm getting this visual picture, or not at all?
Definitely was really big into Legos.
Okay.
So that's fitting since we now are making like real life Legos.
full life giant Legos, bigger than houses. They are houses.
But the original idea and invention to fold up the house, which is the innovation that enables everything else, that came from Paolo. Actually, probably quite a while ago, many years ago, he actually the house that I grew up in as a child, once we moved out, he tore it down and he rebuilt it and sold it, and he rebuilt it using traditional factory built housing. And he just experienced like a whole range of problems with that. Big one, of course, was the shipping issue. Shipping the wide load is incredibly expensive and cumbersome. And that was when he originally drew up the idea to fold it, filed that first patent. And then, around 2017, we just kind of started talking about it again, started developing it again, and got some traction. And now we're here.
So, definitely that generational feel to it, right? So your dad, you grew up as an entrepreneur, and so you grew up in an entrepreneur family, it sounds like. Is you know, I notice for me, it's in my blood from to my kids and traits I see in them, or even my parents and stuff. You feel like that was a different kind of childhood growing up in kind of an entrepreneurial house?
Yeah, I did spend a lot of time, like, kind of after school in my dad's office and stuff. So that, certainly had an impact. And, I've always kind of done my own business ventures and been successful. And I can just never really comprehend, working a regular job or working for someone else. I don't think I'd be a very good employee. So, yeah, it's definitely, a big part of it.
I've always said a lot of great entrepreneurs are not capable employees, right? We run on a different plane for sure. So I'm always fascinated because I grew up pretty poor, and though my parents were entrepreneurs in different ways, they had a million and one ways to screw it up, right? And so as I look at raising my own kids, they're being raised in a very different way. They're very to not raise them as entitled little bastards is very important to me, right? And that they have very real life, and they understand what life is, because they have abundance. And so it's like, how do you raise them and not screw them up? So it's always a fast, I think maybe every parent tries to figure out how to raise their kids and not screw them up. I don't know. So you being in your dad's offices and stuff, and that kind of stuff's always fascinating to me. How's it working with your dad as an adult though?
Oh, it's absolutely amazing. We have very complementary, skill sets. He's on the design engineering side. I'm on kind of the business and marketing side. It's great having someone that I can, rely on and trust. And I have some kids as well. And you're right. They're my kids. I think are going to grow up in a very different, place than I did. So we'll have to, you know, probably end up getting them, involved with whatever I'm working on, at an early age. I think that might be a good tactic.
Yeah, I think the first time one of my older son Tony, he's 6, about to turn 7. First time he did a dad impersonation video, we were in we'd gone to Disney World, and there was this abandoned hotel there, and I just I wanted to just take a look at it. I wanted to take a deeper look, and next thing I know, my wife's recording my son, and he's doing a dad impersonation video, and I just realized that they're in a very different world growing up than what we are, for sure. My kids give me money and they'll say, "Dad, buy another house," right? They'll, like, if they find money or whatever, from money and stuff, or they earn it somehow, they give it to me and say, "Buy another house," and I'm just like, that's different. I never expected that, for sure. So it's pretty cool though. I think it's what everybody, I mean, really, people are investing for a reason, right? And I think most people invest, one, so they can have a lifestyle, and as they get older and they retire, or they change things in life. I think a second reason people definitely invest is for legacy, right? And for me, if I can make an investment into something that has real tangible income, that has an amazing product and has a leadership with experience and background, it makes a huge difference. And so I feel like you guys hit every single one of those check boxes for you when you look at your own investments and stuff. And I think this is just always helpful to our listeners. Like, what things are you looking to determine, right, if you were going to make an investment or something? I know that's hard too, because you're probably massively invested into your own business, right? But I know you've invested into Bitcoin and some other stuff, right, at different times. So, like, how do you look at an investment or investment decision making?
Yeah, it's hard, and I think everyone can kind of approach it different ways. But a lot of times, it's just kind of instinct, and you just have to, take the risk on something, and definitely stay, very dialed into whatever it is. So, if you're investing something, I wouldn't recommend just dumping off your money and forgetting about it. You have to stay tuned in,
Yeah.
and kind of analyze, every little thing that's going into it. And then, another thing as well, if it keeps going good, maybe invest more later on, and keep coming back. And, for me, like you mentioned, one of the big ones was Bitcoin, back in, it's like, about 2013. I had a business that was a Bitcoin exchange, and, not only was the business Bitcoin related, but I believed in it so much that I kept buying Bitcoin the whole time. the whole time I had the business, like all the profits of the business, I took from cash and invested in Bitcoin. And, obviously that ended up being a great decision. And, it allowed me to fund a lot of other, ventures and projects. But, that's the ticket. I mean, if you're, unless you're, starting your own business, if you're working a job, the only way to maybe get out of that cycle might be to invest in something that can elevate your financials up a bit, where you can kind of find freedom. So it's definitely important to take the risk and invest in things. And sometimes you might lose, but I think you only have to really win one time if you can win big, and you kind of end up ahead.
So you said a lot right there, right? And I'm going to try and wrap some of those pieces down for people in some different ways. I think one of the things you said was gut, right? And I think as our investors look at things, there is a decision making matrix when it comes to gut, right? But you got to trust your gut has got to read the right things about people, right? One of the things I always find fascinating is, like, we have in Florida, it's a 17,000 square foot office, right? And I've had people walk in here and they're like, "This is amazing and congratulations." And I'm like, the size of this office is what this office has nothing to do with the success of our business, right? And it's in our financials and our investments and those kind of things. And so, knowing what you're investing into is critical, because then when you know what you're investing into, then your gut can tell you the truth, right? But if you don't know what you're investing into, then your gut can't tell you the truth. And I always go back to Richest Man in Babylon. It's one of my favorite, books on money and investing and those kind of things. I don't know if you've read it or not. If you haven't, you can literally read it in like an hour and a half. But it's solid on with those decision making. But the other thing he talked about is also, if you invest with someone with a known track record and history of success, and that because you know what you're investing into, the industry, you have the ability to read the difference between the bullshitters and the real people. And what happens a lot of times is people can't tell the difference because they don't know what they're talking about investing into. And then what Galiano's talking about is, like, if you go invest in the stock market, what's going to happen is there's no one-time big win very often, right? But if you're investing in alternative investments, if you're investing in Reg A, which is one of the ways is that people like Galiano and I raise capital under, you have a chance to be pre-IPO. You have a chance before a company goes to full IPO, right? And so you're kind of in this ability to get it at the ground floor. There's billionaires, right, from Microsoft and Amazon, right, that were a part of those companies, early on. And so to be an owner behind those things makes a big difference. And so the way of investing with us is you become a fractionalized owner. You become a piece of the game with us. And that's pretty cool. And I think normal angel investors, normal VC investors struggle with choosing their ponies, right? Choosing their horse to race with. And so what I want to do is be able to help you guys choose that, because if they struggle with choosing the right ones as a normal everyday person, that becomes even harder. And so as you break down some of these pieces, you kind of start seeing, like, there's a set of rules to this game if you want to win as an investor. And if you follow that and then you start reading companies the right way, then your gut will tell you the truth on who to invest with and not invest with. So I appreciate, you sharing that part. How many Bitcoins did you actually own? Or are you not going to tell me?
I probably shouldn't even talk about that because, I actually became like a target for hackers.
Oh, wow.
Because people knew that I had the business, so they knew I had Bitcoin, and Bitcoin's very easy to steal. So, we'll just pass on that question. But it's good. It's good that like, for example, a lot of times when we're talking about investing in Boxabl, some people will say, "Oh, I'll invest after the IPO." I'm like, well, if you do that, you might kind of miss the upside, because investing in a safer, more mature company, you're not going to have as much upside. But the cool thing about Reg A or these early stage investments is you're kind of getting in on the ground floor, and if the companies you're investing in really figure it out, there's a much bigger upside. And the other thing I like about it too is usually the minimum investment sizes are small, so this is not a big risk for people. It's not even a big decision. It's like, yeah, I maybe I blew $1,000, giving this a shot to see how it goes. if I lose it all, not the end of the world. But if I get, a big upside on that, that's going to be amazing.
I mean, here's the thing though, is like, so the Bernie Madoff thing just came out on Netflix, right? And
All
and
that.
and he's a scam from day one, right? And knowing the difference between real companies and not real companies is the fear of all investors. And I think one of the things is when I look at it, I see people always need to eat and people need a place to live, right? And so when I look at investing, I say, well, those always have real tangible assets behind them, right? Boxables has a real factory. They have real units. They have real pieces that make them a reality. Like with us, we have real properties and real farms that, our addresses and the things that we do are disclosed with the SEC. And there's a difference between a company that's fully in business and operational and a Reg A or even a crowdfunding company that hasn't begun yet, right? And those are two kind of different stories, because when you are operational and you're not just in research and development phase, right? I was talking to a company the other day that we chose not to have on the podcast because they weren't operational, right? And then as I continued to talk to them, they didn't have a true profit model, right? Their modeling for profitability they couldn't tell me exactly how and where they made money. They had this great idea. I mean, it was, innovative, sexy product, right? But at the same time, a great idea is not a real business. And so what I like is you're not really a startup, right? In the sense that you're not that startup to you haven't begun yet. You're a real tangible business that is in rapid growth. And so I think when you're in the rapid growth phase, right, it's a little bit different than that initial startup. And so as our people begin reading businesses, they have to kind of understand these life cycles, right? I think even with my team, let's put together like a life cycle graph, right? I think that would be pretty cool for people, because Boxables is past, way past that beginning point. And there's, in the Reg A industry, you'd actually be called a mature business, right? But the cool part financially is you're a mature business with the crazy upside, right? You can be the home run that people are looking for, which is super sexy. So I like that. I don't know if there's anything there you want to break down for people at all, or we can keep moving.
Yeah, it's the idea, and where we're starting at, we are established a little bit now, but the market's so big. This is a multi-trillion-dollar market. The room to grow is like absolutely insane. So when I look at Boxabl, I'm like, every day the risk is evaporating more and more and more. And if we truly can mass produce housing at a lower cost than anyone else, I feel like it's game over. It's full world domination.
How many times have you said that though? I watched you say that, right? And I was watching you physically, right? And you're like, I guess we're established. We're an established company, right? And it's amazing though, because we grind so hard, right? To open the Reg A, to raise the capital, to take our concept and our idea to reality, right? But you are established, right? How many times have you actually said that?
Yeah, I mean, it's all kind of new to me, and since we started, things have happened so quickly, and I wasn't sure if anything would work out at the beginning, but with some luck and a lot of hard work, we've been able to kind of keep delivering and delivering and delivering on the promises and the plans that we're making, and things just kind of keep getting better and better, and occasionally you stumble a little bit, but we're moving so fast, it's incredible. And another cool thing that we touched on before is with the Reg A companies, like the way that we're doing it, there's actually a huge amount of transparency that's just required by law. So like you look at one of these disasters like FTX recently, they just had so much crazy stuff that they were doing that all those big institutional investors should have looked and known and seen all that. But they didn't, because they were kind of a private company and their books were closed. But with our companies, the Reg A, we have things like audited financials. Mm-hmm. So any investor can go and look at our financials. We have SEC filings where we're required to report within 4 days or whatever if any big change is happening. So it's just like a huge amount of transparency, and that combined with the social media presence. And for us, like, we let people come and tour our factory. Mm-hmm. Like, everything that we're doing is fully open. You can look at everything, the good and the bad.
It's kind of a new model in business, like open source business, right? Because like I'm kind of past the point of scarcity like I'm not worried about competitors, right? Like if you want to come compete with me, come compete with me, right? I'll take my market share. Good luck to you taking your market share, right? I don't care, right? Is kind of more of the attitude I have when it comes to competitors and stuff. And what we have is so unique in the culture and the DNA of who our people are. You can't, no matter how much money you have, you can't replace what our people are, right? You can't replace my two brothers and my two brother-in-laws who are absolute beasts who work in the company, right? You can't replace, my business. Like there's certain things that, my employees that have been with me 10 years plus, right? You can't replace that stuff, right? And your idea, like what you have with your partners, like go ahead. I wish you the best, but like in this world of Reg A, you don't have any choice but to be an open source company. And some of us, like you and I, are much more on social, and we're very open on our open source. But it's kind of cool, and I hadn't really thought of it as much, that how deep people can get into our businesses. Like I literally, our people know, like if another fund wants to come and try and steal one of my acquisition agents, I'm like, come get them, right? If you're gonna pay them enough money to steal from them, I am so happy for them, right? As a person, right? Come get them, because my guys who do my acquisitions make a lot of money because they're finding deals 20-30% off market. And one of them's my wife's cousin, and another one is a wholesaler that sold to us for years that we were able to bring in house to the company. So the loyalty part, I'm kind of like good luck to them. So but yeah, that open source part of it's huge. I think what else about Boxables I think is in your DNA that you want to share with people that they absolutely have to know.
Well, really, what we're doing is just so different than anything else out there. And a lot of times people look at the company and they say, "Oh, this is a company making tiny house," but that's not what we are. We have a building system that we think can build most residential buildings on the planet, and everything that you don't see that's kind of underneath the walls is all different. I mean, there is like nothing left of traditional construction in our product, and it's just like if we get this right, the impact that we can have is like so incredible, because we're talking about.
Well, a lot of people don't understand the history of housing in America, right? So, like one of the reasons I chose Philly, Houston, right, as some of the markets we invest into is because, there was a racism that proceeded in the past, right? And I'm sure there's some today, but in the past where people couldn't get loans, right, of different ethnicities. And when they couldn't get loans, they developed cash markets, right, in the housing industry. And those cash markets kept housing prices down, right? And so it kept capital and money from being invested into it. And then as the world began to change, there became new versions of that created barriers to entry, and construction being one of the biggest, because that cost of housing became too much. The cost of construction became too much to build up, rough neighborhoods, and affordable housing became left onto the government, right? It became like horrible housing authorities and those kind of things. And if anybody else is like me, I don't want the government being the one providing my housing. That to me starts to make me think of things in the world that I don't want to think of when my government starts controlling my housing and my home and my privacy and those kind of things. So maybe that's just a little bit personal, but so I feel like the impact, like you're saying, is the ability to create a quality home. And I think that's, one of the challenges is when people live in a great place and the right type of environment, it levels up everything. I've always heard people say wealth is not, what creates happiness in the world. And I do agree with that. But I will say when you drive into your driveway into a nice house and there's a feeling to it, like it's a unique feeling to driving in and knowing you're walking into your place, and your place is special, that it's good and it's powerful, right? To the person, if they realize it, it's huge. And I think that's a part of the core of the American dream, is to own your own house. It's not to rent. That is not the American dream. The American dream is to own your own house. And that's the difference between stuff that costs too much that people can't afford, and neighborhoods that have vacant boarded up houses because of the cost of construction is too much. And so when you start talking about a way to help people gentrify without costing them $1 million to buy a place to live in a decent neighborhood, then it starts making a huge difference to an overall framework in the U.S., which is a framework where people want to be there's more people wanting to be angry than I've ever seen before. And I think a lot of that starts with the home and how people are raised and how those processes of life continue. So that's some of my thoughts on the impact. I mean, what else do you think on the impact?
Well, you mentioned government too, and that's definitely a big issue here. There's a tremendous amount of regulation surrounding building construction, and one of the reasons for that is
Safety.
it's just like fractured thing. You have like no big national brand. You have little individual builders all over the place. You have city inspectors coming out at multiple points during the build, and a huge amount of fees and taxes. So hopefully we'll be able to you know uh, you know change that a little bit by becoming like a big trusted source for these buildings that are well known, and definitely uh, really trying to just absolutely crush the cost of housing. If we can't produce the lowest cost housing solution ever done, then the company's a failure. That is our mission. That's
I
what we
like
have to
that.
do. Everything we push towards every day is for that.
I like that. I like that. What's the cost of a Boxabl?
So we're selling the initial casita. The last price was 60,000.
Okay,
So right
awesome.
now we're doing it's like a workforce housing project for a copper mine in Arizona. So we're doing a few hundred units there. They're shipping out every day to that job site, and they're actually two stories. So we're doing like it's basically like four casitas and then another four stacked on top with a central staircase, all individual apartments.
Nice. What's your construction cost on that?
Right now, the material cost is about 32,000.
Okay.
But like we basically started in, just with this first version that, Paolo and Kyle and I drew, and we jumped into the factory, and we hoped it would all work. And luckily all the parts fit together, and it worked. So since we started, it's been about 14 months. Now we've gone from just the three of us figuring it out to our whole team, all our
Mhm.
employees, all their brain power is into it. So what's happening next is actually we're transitioning into the next generation of the product, where we have a huge amount of changes, like all stuff we learned that's going to make the product have better ratings structurally, faster to produce, lower cost, different materials. We're also spending about $15 million in automation equipment, and then we're opening up this new building. So like taking everything we learned and now implementing it, and we're going to be pushing everything. We're going to be producing more units. So then the fixed overhead is divided by less units, more units. That brings the cost down. The new materials are gonna cost less. The new equipment is going to bring the labor costs down. So we're like continuing to massage this thing into place, and we just look at it and say, how can a guy out standing on a ladder in the rain with a hammer on a job site ever beat an efficient factory assembly line, where you have this standardized product that's repeatable? You're using unskilled, technician labor that's low cost. You have automation. You're doing huge bulk purchasing where you're buying straight from the factory who's producing the doors or the windows or whatever. Automation, like the list goes on of principles that we believe are going to lead us to a game-changing cost to build on these. And we just don't see that a traditional site builder, these craftsmen are ever going to be able to compete with that.
So the sparks comes to mind, right? Is I know somebody sitting here listening, right? And so like, how do you feel putting them out of work in that kind of conversation, right? And what is your thoughts on that? Because on the other side, I look at it and say, well, you create a massive employer, right? And you're hiring, and you'll become a primary employer in the markets, right, where your factories are and those kind of things. But talk about that a little bit. I know you don't like to be very super political as a person, but I think that I think it's kind of a relevant conversation.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, technology continues to evolve, and workforces shift as things become more efficient, and that brings up quality and brings down cost, and benefits everyone overall. I think if you look at the last few hundred years of like human evolution, you see the one driving factor in increasing quality of life for everyone is just technology. Technology creates more and more and more abundance. So, we hopefully are if we get into this $1 billion factory, can become like one of the biggest employers, in Las Vegas, maybe, because what we're doing is on such a big scale. And we would be basically taking anyone without any previous, training or skills off the street, and we'd be training them and putting them into a job. And I believe that we'll be able to pay great wages. I think if we're looking at pulling labor from like an unskilled labor pool, who are we competing against? Maybe it's like Amazon. Amazon's probably one of the bigger employers for like unskilled labor, or fast food or something. So ideally we'd like to offer them better pay and better benefits, and really create a product and a company that's so good that everyone can benefit. And another thing we do is everyone in our company has stock options. Whether it's the CFO or the janitor, they all get stock options in the company. So then everyone's kind of incentivized and aligned for the success of the company.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant. And when you look at the real thing with technology, right, is people aren't working in the fields like they were 100 years ago, right? 200 years ago we didn't have airplanes and we didn't have cars. 50 years ago, did we really have computers? Not really. Not what we see as a computer today. And workforces transition, right? And we're at unprecedented unemployment, right, here in the United States. Now, interest rates will cause some unemployment to go up, because that's what the history of interest rates do. But at the same time, like, our ability to help people level up is huge. And a lot of people swing a hammer because they had to, not because they chose to, right? And there are people who absolutely, love being in trades and being in skills, and there are still people who are going to be on sites setting up Boxabls and putting the Boxabls together and going through that process. And there'll be probably an outsourced, or a team that eventually, I think, in the scale, right, where Boxabl teams go out and they set up the units and they do all of those kind of things, would be my imagination. But super cool, man. We hit a lot of topics today. I enjoyed it. I felt like you gave some real insight to our investors, some great nuggets for them. We're going to have links to all the stuff for all of you watching, to their YouTube channel and to their website and to everything with Boxables. And if there's one movie clip that you think people should watch, that would tell them a little bit about the world we live in, what would you say it'd be? Throwing you on the spot here. We might have to cut this part out because you can't think of one.
A movie clip? I don't really watch much TV lately. You know what I really liked? Tiger King on Netflix. That was hilarious. It's actually a movie clip, but I recommend that one.
We'll have to throw something on Tiger King up on the links too. But it was a lot of fun, brother. And any last things you want to share with everyone?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Would love to have you come out and visit us in Las Vegas and take a tour of the factory. And, ideally, one day you guys can, build and develop and lease real estate using our product. And hopefully we'll be able to provide you with a product that's going to, totally change your economics and your time frames and everything on your projects.
Cool, brother. Well, thank you very much. And we're a wrap, everybody. Is there anything, Galiano, is there anything you want to cut or anything you didn't like through the segment? Because I think you saying you didn't want to go political, I actually think I went more political than I normally do with some of the questions. So,
no,
at least I didn't go religion, so that was good. I steered away from religion in there. So I figure you could handle either one either way, but.
Yeah, it's all good. As long as you're not going to be like, did you vote for Trump? And then half the people are going to hate me or something.
Nope.
Nope. So, yeah, it's all good. I have no comment on that. Whatever you want to cut or put in, it's all good.
Cool. Do we have anything open loops that we needed to close while we're on? I mean, it's an easy time to do it.
No, I think we were going to do another video of some sort in a few weeks, and I was hoping that we could just stream. I think you were talking about doing a live stream or something on
Yeah,
that
we
one.
usually get about 1,000, anywhere from 700 to 1,000 people on a live stream. So I figured we'd do a live stream and get people on live and let people do Q&A with us. And now that's
Yeah,
kind of like a co-promoted Zoom, so you guys will promote it too.
yeah. So I was wondering, is it possible to stream that on YouTube and Instagram? Because I
Yeah,
know they both have live stream features. Can we just stream it all at once? Because then we'll get a
absolutely.
pretty big number.
Yeah, and we should any we'll live stream it on both of those for sure too. I think we
Yeah,
always run ours on Facebook, don't we, as a live?
or Facebook. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if there's like a software that we could do it to put it on all of ours together,
Yeah.
or how that works. I haven't not done that yet,
I'll have the
yeah,
guys
we'll get a
I'll have the guys get you an answer on that pretty quickly.
nice, nice.
We probably because if with the size of their list and how many we normally put on, we might need to make sure we're on a platform that can hold more than 1,000 people live. I would guess it'd be more than 1,000 live with us and them combined, because we'll put 700 to 800 on ourselves. So
Yeah, if I go live like on Instagram, I think we get quite a big amount of people because we've got 650,000 on there.
yeah,
Uh, and then if we could do YouTube as well, we've got 100,000 on there.
yeah, we can
So
do all
yeah,
that for sure. So I'll have the
cool,
team make sure they process through that in the coordination of it.
perfect, cool.
Yeah, because like
All right, yeah,
our Facebook through our different channels is about 1 million through the different channels, so that's probably our biggest avenue. I don't think our Instagram is super huge, but that for whatever reason we've invested more, or had more investors come from Facebook than I know Instagram's a part of Facebook, but
and even if
still a
we
different
can't go
channel.
live even if we can't go live on all of them, we could repost it on all of them later.
Yeah,
Like we could drop
but
it, like
live's better. Live's better.
yeah,
People love live.
our our Facebook investors group, we've got a lot of people in that group. We could drop a link in there as well.
Okay, cool.
Like
Well, let's promote the shit out of each other, and we'll raise more money, and then we'll look at, if we can get Rad America done, then we'll look at the Boxabl Reit, before the end of the year. So I'm pretty fired up, bro. So
that'll be awesome. Yeah, we're gonna need someone to take the 100,000 rooms that we're gonna start producing. I'm like, we're going to get the loan from the Department of Energy, and then the clock will start ticking on like, building the factory, and then actually having 100,000 fucking houses to sell somehow, and I had to figure out how to sell, that many billions of dollars in room modules. So it would be great to have you on board with that.
yeah, I mean, I think we'll sell a lot of them. I think we'll buy a lot of them. I feel like we're only getting better at the raising capital thing, right? Like I feel like we're just a child, right? And you have a
Yeah.
more viral brand, right, than us, but we're just gonna keep doing it. And we're just gonna keep buying land and keep finding places, and a better cost to put on the land. So I mean, it just makes sense. So
To build some cities,
you build some cities. Let's
build a
build,
whole city.
right? Well, we're gonna have to build a city outside your factory just to house your people. So.
Yes,
Like a
it's
lot
true.
of the big car companies, like they're building like factories in the middle of like nowhere Tennessee, nowhere Mississippi and shit, and like they're building little towns right next to their factories, and like they're literally like they're building a whole environment, right there in some of those things, because we're looking at farms, like we're trying to, part of what we're doing is we're trying to pinpoint where they're building, and then we're working on buying farms close by, that way that they're forced, if they want to develop, they're forced to pay us a lot of money for our farms. So it's one of our strategies. So
Love it. Awesome.
all right, brother, we'll talk soon.
See ya. Thank you.